Greetings everyone, my name is Cam, and I'm here to bring you another Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report between the Lizardmen and Ogre Kingdom. 1,500 points on both sides. The theme of this battle is the Lizardmen have been pushed back to their sacred temple. The Ogres are looking to loot and pillage. This is a bit of a rematch of the first battle report I did. So we have similar themed lists. We each swapped out 1 or 2 units and then added an extra 500 points on. You can see the battlefield here has a bit of a diagonal style deployment. This was determined by my opponent. He decided to pick the meeting engagement. However, he also said we should increase the distance to, I believe it was 24, just so it felt like a little bit more of a standard battle in terms of distancing and such. Some interesting pieces of terrain to note on the battlefield here. We have a marshland with a bit of a ruined remain of a chapel. On my side of the board, that could serve as a bit of a choke point area, or just a bit of cover from shooting attacks. There's a chapel with a fence against the board edge that will either A, create an area where people have to fight over a fence, or B, try to avoid it and funnel into that middle open ground, no man's land area. And then opposite of that is another fence, but it is occupied by a unknown forest, so I don't know if anyone's going to want to go in there. And on the other side, my opponent's got just a ton of jungle and stuff to kind of give him cover and get that theme of the Lizardmen advancing out towards the Ogres to defend their sacred temple. Now to just go over the army lists that we both brought today. As already mentioned, they're pretty similar to the ones we took in the first game, just expanded on. So, as an example, I had like 1 unit of Gnoblars in my first list. Now we're doubling down, I'm taking 2 Gnoblars. Same with the Saber Tusks. I had 1 Saber Tusk in my first list, now I'm taking 2. Still have my unit of Iron Guts. We're just expanding on that. Changed my BSB's loadout a little bit, and I'm also not going to be a fool. I'm going to put them in my main unit of Iron Guts this time. In terms of what I took that's new in this list, I took 3 Man-Eaters with pistols. I took some Mournfang Cavalry armed with great weapons. The captain's got a set of pistols. And that's about it, really. Like I said, too, an extra unit of Gnoblars and an extra Saber Tusk as well. A couple of upgrades, magic items and such as well. Frosthide Banner on the Iron Guts. A couple of little things that you'll notice in the list. And a very similar thing with my opponent here. Taking a very similar list to what he had in the first game that we did. Instead of 1 big Sars block, now he's got 2. Still has the 2 small skirmisher units of Skinks with blowpipes. He swapped out his cold ones, he kept the cold ones. He swapped out his Croxagors, for 2 Scar veterans that are kitted out with some very nice magic gear. Still has the Skink Priest that's going to be running Lore of Beast. And the new thing that he has in the list that's really going to hurt is this Stegodon with these razor sharp horns. I believe they deal D3 multiple wounds on impact, so we really want to avoid letting that charge into us. That just about wraps up both of our lists. Let's go over deployment for the battlefield we have today. Starting with the Ogre side of the battlefield here. I decided to go with a bit of a gun line. Can I say? I love my Ogre range. I've got the Man-Eaters on the far side there with Ogre pistols. For their 2 special rules, they have poison attacks and they have stubborn, so they're shooting some poisonous bullets at the enemy. I've got my cannon on the opposite side. It's got its eyes set on that Stegodon. And then just a general battle line in front of all those gunner units of Gnoblars and Saber Tusks. We're going to throw those out there, and we're going to try to buy as much time as we can before the lines actually clash. Since I have this cannon, I know I have a bit of a range advantage over this Lizardman, and unless he gets some crazy spells, he's most likely going to be moving towards me and meeting me for the engagement on my half of the battlefield. Lizardman player is more than aware of my Ogre shenanigans with using cannons and range and guns to shoot them down from afar. So I think he is planned accordingly. He's got a very hard-hitting center force there with a big Sars block, the cold ones, and the Stegodon kind of going right through the middle. Then he's got another Sars block and a unit of Skinks on the far flank, and his last unit of Skinks covering the opposite flank. So he's got a pretty solid little formation there. It's going to be hard to pick and prod at his sides as he moves up, and it's just going to be really hard to stop that central formation of Lizardmen. That is a very hard-hitting force, and if we don't soften it up enough with our range attacks before we actually make the main contact, the battle lines of the Iron Guts and the SARS clash, it'll be all over for us. And just really quick, because I forgot to get a picture of it, my opponent's spells that he rolled up was the Amber Spear, and he has the signature spell for the Lore Beast, the +1 strength, +1 toughness again. So pretty much the same thing he actually had in our original battle. Then also, like the original battle, the Lizardman player is going to be going first. He doesn't move up as fast as he did in that first game we did. I think it's a little bit more of a cautious advance with that central unit there. But the skinks definitely do move up pretty quick along the flanks there. Other than that, not too much is going to be happening on the first turn. As you know, Lizardmen have very short range. I think maybe the Stegodon shoots its bow off, rolls a 1 to hit, doesn't do anything. Oh, actually, there is one thing that'll actually be quite eventful happening this turn. I believe on the far side, his skink unit actually didn't sprint, and he's going to cast a spell. Amber Spear, the powered-up version of my Man-Eaters. He rolls the dice, and gets double 6s on his first spell. Most people would say this is a bit of an ill omen in the game of Warhammer Fantasy, and indeed it was. The spell goes off. My Man-Eaters take a Strength 10 Amber Spear to the face. One of them is just wiped right off the battlefield. The unfortunate part for the Lizardman is he rolls the miscast table, and his wizard has become stupid and loses 2 power levels, meaning he will not be casting any more spells for the rest of the game. This is definitely a very unfortunate thing to have had happen to the Lizardmen. I did point out to him that my BSB took an Obsidian Trinket, which is like a 40-point upgrade to get the whole Iron Gut block, Magic Resistance 2. So, you know, I mean, a little bit of an upside, I guess. You could say I wasted my points on that item since it's not going to do anything. And he did kill a Man-Eater, but I don't really know if you could say that justified the point cost of that wizard. It was just kind of something I pointed out to him, so, you know, they hope he felt a little bit better about it. And moving on to the start of the Ogre turn 1, I'm going to do what I said, sprint up my Gnoblars and my Saber Tusk, get everything in kind of position to stall up this Lizardman advance as much as possible. Having him lose his magic is just even less range on that side, which will really help push them towards me and let me pick the terms of engagement. And a little bit of a nasty trap, you could say, we have here. I set this Saber Tusk up behind this chapel on the far side I was describing earlier by the fence. It's here to sway away the SARS cavalry that are approaching, but it also presents a nice target for a bunch of skinks that are moving up on the side. They could easily take that thing out with some blowpipes, but the only problem is, if he wants to do that, he's going to be presenting the unit towards my other Saber Tusk, as well as my Chariot and my Mournfang. Now, there would most likely be a fence in between the skinks and those units, but I think my opponent will have to weigh his odds quite carefully if he wants to move up and take out that annoying Saber Tusk that seems like such a prime target. Other than setting up some Saber Tusk traps, my Gnoblars are also getting ready to set up some traps. They got their eyes set on that central block of Saurus, Stegodon, and Cold Ones. I'm going to go up there, try to stall him up as much as possible while my range units pick away at all of his vital targets. Hopefully that cannonball can take down the Stegodon before it actually makes contact with our main Ogre line. And on that note, my cannon aligns a perfect shot at the Stegodon. I roll the distance, it lands directly on the beast. Another die is rolled to wound, and it comes up a 1. No wounds dealt to the Stegodon on turn 1. Damn! So really, not too much happens on turn 1 for the Ogres. I guess you could say we got a bit lucky with the Skink Priest having a bit of a miscast, but really my first turn is just spent getting all of my annoying units into position and setting up our traps to delay the Lizardmen as much as possible. And it appears that the Skinks took the bait for the trap that I set with the Saber-tusk. They move up, seeing a prime opportunity to take out some serious chaff that could stall up their Cold One Knights advancing in the middle. They ready their blowpipes, and they take out the wolf with ease. The question will come during my turn, can I catch those annoying little skinks? The rest of the Lizardman force is advancing through the open no man's land. They are exiting out of the jungle and prepared to meet the ogres in open combat. He also has his Stegodon, and I believe the Skinks shoot a couple of poisonous darts at my Noblars in the front there. Gets about 5 kills. You can see my Ogre dead pile at the end of turn 2 here. Not too bad in terms of casualties lost, but I would say he does actually have a bit of a point lead on me at this stage. Again, we'll have to see if I can catch and kill that Skink unit when it's the start of my turn. So, no beating around the bush, start of my turn. That hound is being let loose on the Skinks. I roll the dice to charge, and my opponent decides to flee. A mighty double 6 is rolled for the hound's charge, the max distance it can go. Will those Skinks be able to flee? We measured it out. He needed to roll, I believe, a 10 or better on the flee distance in order to make it, and the Skinks come up short. They are scattered, routed, and some devoured by my lone Saber-tusk. Now that is point efficiency right there. The remainder of my turn is spent further moving up the Noblars into a prime position to delay the main Lizardman advance. You can see a nice overshot here too. This is looking at the end of turn 2 here. The Lizardmen have really positioned themselves to poke and prod at my far side. Unfortunately, the opposite side has been done in by my Saber-tusk, and you can see the Noblars are in a prime position to delay the Lizardmen at the start of turn 3. Oh, and another important thing to note before we start turn 3, my cannon got another cheeky shot at the Stegodon, and this time we did not roll a 1 to wound. In fact, I dealt 3 wounds to the Stegodon. I believe it only has 1, maybe 2 remaining. So, definitely not a good spot for that Stegodon to be in at the end of turn 2. Now actually beginning turn 3 for the Lizardmen. They start the turn off by doing a charge on my lowly Noblar unit. And this was with actually the big block of Sars infantry. And he rolled, let's see, 7 ones. That is quite the toll. And the other side there, the Cold Ones and the Stegodon charge the other unit of Noblars. Yeah, I mean, you can see here the toll that the traps, the stand and shoot from the Noblars has really taken on the Lizardmen here, as well as the cannonball and the combined shooting of everything. But having said that, I believe we all know these Noblars are not going to last long in that first contact there. And yes, sure enough, they are quickly devoured by the Lizardmen, and the main battle line of the Ogres is now presented. Will they actually be able to make it? That is the big question. Because again, as with the cannonball and all the ogre pistols and stuff that we got right now, I'm actually quite comfortable holding my ground and just taking shots at him. Yeah, those skinks will be annoying and get a couple of wounds on the far side there with their blowpipes, but I think for the most part here, my opponent has to continue the advance towards the ogres. The start of my turn for the bottom half of turn 3 here, you can see I'm moving my Saber-tusk that just chomped down those skinks into a real annoying spot just to poke and prod, march block, do all those annoying little things, that big SARS block there. I have one Noblar that fled from that combat. He managed to rally, and during the shooting phase, we are just going to pretty much let loose a volley of everything into the Stegodon and get that final wound through. That is one of the key threats to my army right there. That thing having the D3 or D6 multiple wounds on charge, and just being a really hard-hitting unit. I am quite glad to have gotten rid of that before it actually made contact. Again, it did actually kill some Noblars, get some shooting attacks through and such, but it was dealt with before it actually got to the target that it would have liked to make contact with. So, quite happy about that. Then also this photo was actually at the start of turn 4. The Lizardman player decides to go all in. He has his Saurus block and his Cold Ones charge into the Iron Guts. It's a little questionable if all of them were going to be able to make contact with my unit, but I think he was hoping to get just a couple of the Cold Ones and a couple of the Saurus in there. Maybe not all of both units. But unfortunately, the Dice Gods were not with the Lizardmen this game. He fails the charge with the Saurus, and the Cold Ones do make contact. They go right into the Iron Guts, maybe getting a wound or so in. They are a little bit faster since most of my guys have great weapons, but it's not pretty. They pretty much get chopped right down. And additionally, he shoots some more blowpipes from those skinks and my man-eaters, kills another one of them. Definitely not bad. That unit's been roughly making its points back, I think, given the fact that that wizard got one of them and the blowpipes managed to get another. I think one man-eater's remaining there. It's like a 200-point unit, so not too bad from them. But unfortunately, with the failed charge from his main Saurus block and the Cold Ones making it in, the Cold Ones are killed, and at the start of my turn, I'm going to charge that Saurus block with not just the Iron Guts, but the man-eater. To add insult to injury, both of my units got a successful ogre charge off, and man, the impact damage alone that dealt, I believe we killed 7 Saurus warriors. The combat following, I know he's got a Scar veteran in there, but it is not going to be too pretty. And yeah, after all of the wounds have been dealt, the swords have been swung, the Lizardmen are left with just their Scar veteran champion remaining. My ogres took a couple of wounds. Maybe I lost an Iron Gut, but it is probably the end of the game there with that catastrophic combat. The Mournfang and the cannon charge on the opposite side there, his other remaining Saurus block, but again, my opponent kind of knows this is the final road for these Lizardmen. Unfortunately, their temple will be plundered soon by my ogre tribe. I think, unfortunately, on these final last turn or two sequences for the Lizardmen, their forces just got a little bit too weakened down from the ogre firepower. Additionally, having the Saurus blocks kind of split up there, I'm not saying he shouldn't have done that. He might have felt like there was no other option, but he really needed 2 of those hard-hitting units at full strength going into one of my ogre units if he wanted to win that combat. Going toe-for-toe there with my Iron Gut block is really a questionable combat for the Lizardmen, unfortunately. But we did do the combat out, and was rather exciting, as you saw there in the photograph. I did lose an Iron Gut, a man-eater. Did do a couple of wounds to my guys, so it's not like the ogres got out scot-free there. Definitely lost a couple of ogres, all of our Noblars, and Saber Tusk. But afterwards, my opponent decided to call it post that combat, and I figured that was more than fair. Probably no need to go over victory points or anything for this battle, but still an interesting one nonetheless, and I'm glad we played it out, documented the whole thing here. Ogres are a really tough army for Lizardmen to go up against. My opponent has remarked a couple of times he's not even sure if he's actually beaten the Ogres with Lizardmen. I think he has won a game or two, but it is definitely an army where I feel like I have a lot of the upper hand over the Lizardmen. The Lizardmen really need a lot of things to go well for them. Like in that first battle report you saw, it was much closer. Pretty much everything was going for the Lizardmen in that game, and nothing was working well for the Ogres. And this was a game where a lot of stuff was working well for the Ogres, not much for the Lizardmen, and you can see, They really do need, I feel like, every little edge they can get if they want to go toe for toe with a strong ogre list. In terms of some stuff I could have done differently in this game, I think my play was pretty solid, but there was one moment where my man-eaters had a prime opportunity to charge those annoying skinks that were in front of them, just constantly blowpipe attacking them, and poisoning and prodding. If I did a charge there, he A, would have fled, and I don't have to deal with the unit for at least a couple of turns, ideally. B, he would have stayed and shot, maybe killed one of my man-eaters, but then I think it would be pretty safe to say that I would win that combat. Yeah, that would have also dealt with the unit, including a hero in that unit. That would have been a much more favorable point exchange for me. The problem is I was too distracted with shooting that Stegodon at that time to realize that that was a move I had available for me. So I think being a little bit less tunnel visioned on all my shooting attacks and seeing a good opportunity like that is something I should have been a little bit more aware of. Then for the Lizardmen, it's tough to say what they should have done differently this game. I think, I know this is something I kind of mentioned on their first battle report, but moving up just as quick as possible if you're not going to be doing that range exchange with the opposing force, and you want to be getting into close combat, which he clearly does. I mean, he took, 50 Saurus warriors in this list. He definitely wants to get that army in close combat as quick as possible. I know that's hard to do when I have so much shooting, but I don't know. I think that they really needed to get up there as fast as possible. He did charge with his cold ones at one point and fail a charge. I might have forgot to mention that during the battle report, but I know that did stall up some of those hard-hitting units because the cold ones were in front and he had the Stegodon and the big Saurus block behind there. I know that stalled him up for one turn, but he really needed two of those hard-hitting units in contact with one of my main ogre lines during those end stages. The fact that they got split up at the very end there, and those other key units like the Stegodon, the cold ones, got so lit up from shooting attacks, it meant that the combats were kind of doomed to begin with. If he could have gotten both of those Saurus into one of those ogre combats, I think it would have gone much better for him. Or if he was able to sustain, one of those other units that he lost, the cold ones with Stegodon during the battle, maybe putting them on one flank together, far away from the cannon, so they aren't kind of in the middle taking the brunt of all of my shooting attacks. That could have also helped. But, a lot of this is hindsight. I think overall he did play pretty well, and he's played against my ogres enough that, I don't think he's making the wrong calls in general. I think he knows what he needs to do to beat this army. So I don't really want to, go into depth what my opponent should have done here. I think he's a smart enough guy that he does understand his tactics well enough. But Dice Gods just really weren't with him this game. His wizard miscasting at the start was really, really rough. Me just having some good cannon shots, some good ogre pistol shots, what are you going to do? But fun game nonetheless, and I think it actually showcases really well a lot of the stuff I've been talking about in my tip videos for ogres. You got to see how effective Noblars are, the full force of Iron Guts in a combat, and you kind of got a little sneak peek at some other stuff I'm going to be talking about soon. Anyways, folks, thanks for watching this video. Much appreciated. Hope you really like these battle reports. Go ahead and comment any of your thoughts on the battle down below. Have a great day.